Friends, today I'm going to talk about the two books of Chronicles, First and Second Chronicles, and the lessons that we learn from these two books when we read them. Now, the book of Chronicles mainly deals with the two monarchies of Israel. There was the kingdom of Israel, which was in the northern side, and then there was the kingdom of Judah, which was on the southern, which consisted of the two tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Now, the first lesson that we can learn from these two kingdoms is that the kings who are completely obedient to God, they loved God and they served God, and they worshipped only God, they did not worship idols. We see that they were very prosperous in the ruling of their kingdoms, in their reigns, and also we see that also the people they were ruling, their subjects were also prosperous and happy, and there was peace throughout their reign. The two best examples that I can give of kings in Israel who were very obedient to God were David and his son Solomon. These two kings were very successful in their reigns because they were obedient to God. And what we can see is that the other kings who were disobedient and they were worshipping idols, like King Ahab of the kingdom of Israel, and so many other kings, because these two kingdoms, over time, they had so many kings. Their reigns were filled with trouble, their rules, their kingdoms were filled with trouble. They were always being attacked by the enemies and being defeated. They always had diseases, death, poverty, and so many troubles, all because the kings refused to obey God, and most of them, they led the people in the worship of idols. And they also ended up desecrating the temple. And as a result of this, their reigns were not so successful. Now, in First Chronicles chapter 29, we see that the people offered a lot of their resources, gold, silver, bronze, towards the building of the temple of God. David had offered to build the temple where God could be worshipped, because remember, all this time they didn't have a physical building where they could worship God. They would just pray and offer their sacrifices to God at the the Ark of the Covenant, which was based somewhere in a town called Gibeon. So they didn't have a physical building, a temple where they could go to worship God. So David prayed and asked God if he could build a temple where they could go to worship God. And God told him that since he had taken so many lives in the course of defending Israel, going to battle, he would not allow him to build the temple, but that his son Solomon would build the temple for God. So, fast forward, before David passed away and handed over the reins to Solomon, he made sure that, because he could see that Solomon was a young man, he made sure that he put the materials which were needed ready for building the temple. And so he called upon the Israelites to make their contributions towards the building of the temple. So in First Chronicles chapter 29, we see that the people offered a lot of their resources, gold, silver, bronze, towards the building of the temple of God. They willingly gave to the Lord. Now, of special interest is the prayer that David prayed in First Chronicles 29, chapter 12, where he prayed, "All riches and wealth come from you. You rule everything by your strength and power, and you're able to make everyone great and strong." What we can learn here is that all wealth comes from God. It doesn't matter how hard you work, or sometimes you could find that somebody doesn't really work that hard, but they have been praying, and because of their prayers and their actions, you find that God blesses them. So sometimes you work hard and you get that money, and you probably think it is because of your efforts, but it is through the blessings of God that you're able to get that money. So what the lesson that we learn here is that God is the source of all wealth, all money, all these things, gold and silver, they come from God. So we when God blesses us, we should show our gratitude to God by being able to give an offering. Like when you go to church on Sunday, when you're able to, you give an offering as a thank you to God, because even that money that you're giving belongs to God. And then when you go to Second Chronicles chapter 1 verse 7, God asked Solomon in a dream what he would like to be given, and Solomon replied that he would like to be given wisdom and knowledge to rule over the many people of God that they were in the kingdom of Israel. And God was pleased with this answer, because he told Solomon that if it was somebody else, they would have asked for wealth, money, property. They would have asked for that their enemies be killed. But Solomon asked for wisdom. So because of the request that he made, God was able to give him even more than that wisdom. He was given wisdom and wealth. And throughout history, Solomon is known as the wisest king that ever existed on earth. So what we can learn from here is that when you're praying to God, even if you might be having financial problems, don't just concentrate on praying about the money, that I need money, please bless me with money, because remember, even before you begin to pray, God already knows what your problem is, what your situation is. So it would do you well to consider praying for things like wisdom. Maybe that wisdom, if you're given that wisdom, you might be able to learn how to even make wealth using your wisdom. So we've learned that the kings who were obedient to God, they had successful reigns and they became prosperous. And even the people that they were ruling were prosperous and happy. While the kings who rebelled against the commands of God and worshipped idols and did other things that were wrong, and like making decisions without consulting God, they ended up facing disaster, like King Rehoboam and King Ahab. Also, what we learn from the book of Second Chronicles is that there was King Ahaziah, whose mother was the daughter of King Ahab. King Ahab was very evil and he used to worship idols. So King Ahaziah ended up getting advice from his mother's relatives, and he ended up going to join the king of Israel, the northern kingdom, to fight a war which had nothing to do with his kingdom in the south. So this also shows us that the company we keep really matters. Here you are living in peace, and then you go and join somebody else to fight their war with them. The end result is that King, the king, King Joram of Judah, the northern king of Israel, the northern kingdom was defeated in that war, and both of the kings were killed. King Ahaziah and Joram, they were both killed during that time because of his association with King Joram, who was disobedient to God. And then towards the end of the book of Second Chronicles, we see the destruction of Jerusalem. This is where Jerusalem was destroyed completely, and that is because of the king who was then in power. All the kings towards the end, they were all disobedient to God, and they were worshiping idols. And as a result of that, and God sent so many prophets to come and warn them, but they would laugh at them and dismiss them. So as a result of that, God sent King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylonia to come and destroy Jerusalem. So what King Nebuchadnezzar did is that he came, he set Jerusalem on fire. He took all the gold and all the property and took it to Babylonia. he burnt the temple. First of all, he took all the gold that was in there and silver. Then he burnt the temple. He burnt the palaces in Jerusalem, and then he burnt all the buildings there and the walls, which was served as a fortress to secure Jerusalem. He burnt down the wall. He basically burnt down Jerusalem. Then he killed all the young males, and the survivors of that attack, they were all, including the king, who was then the king. He was taken to Babylonia. They were all taken there to be either slaves or prisoners. And that was the end of the kingdom of Judah. For the time being, Judah stayed desolate for 70 years until the Jews were allowed now to return back again, but they had to go to slavery for 70 years because of their disobedience to God. So those are the lessons that we learn from First and Second Chronicles. What we learn is that disobedience to God leads to disaster, punishment, while obedience to God is rewarded with peace in your life, prosperity, and happiness. So the choice is yours, dear friend. You can choose to either have that peace, prosperity, and a life, and you have everlasting life thereafter, or you can choose to enjoy your life right now, be disobedient, do what you want, and then you face the consequences of disaster. Thank you.